Good evening, I'm Mrs. Boland, and we are finishing up our review for Exam 1 in College Algebra. We have 4 problems left, and I'm going to do each video. The last 2 videos are going to have 2 problems each in it. So this is going to be for number 26 and 27. First, we're going to do problem 26. My 6 disappeared. It says, solve the equation by making appropriate substitutions. So the equation looks like this. It's x to the 4th minus 7x squared minus 18 equals 0. Now this is a quadratic equation because you always look at the middle term and you see that that is equal to 2, and then look at the leading term, and that's 4. Since 4 is twice 2, this is actually in a quadratic form. It's not what you would consider a standard quadratic form maybe, but it is still a quadratic equation. So we're going to use substitution to solve for this. So we're going to say let u equal x squared. Okay, so by letting u equal x squared, I end up with u squared minus 7u minus 18 equals 0. Okay, so that's with our substitution. And now we're going to solve for u, not for x, but for u. So I'm going to use the quadratic equation. And in this case, instead of saying x equals, I'm going to go u equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of that, this whole thing, is divided by 2a. Don't forget to put this negative b here under over the denominator, okay? It is part of that fraction. So we're going to pull off our coefficients right now, and we have a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 7, and c is equal to negative 18. Okay, so u, I don't want to use that color. Let me use this color over here because I remember using it once before and it was hard to see. So we'll go u is equal to minus b minus a negative 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all under the radical there, and all of this over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, so that's our substitution in. So we end up with negative times a negative gives me a positive 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared is 49. And then I have a negative times a negative. So that's going to give me a positive, so it's going to be plus. And now 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 times 18 is 72. Oops, not 79, 72. There we go. Divided by 2. Okay, so now we need to figure out what is 72 plus 49, and that is equal to 121. So now I end up with u is equal to 7 plus or minus the square root of 121 divided by 2. Well, what's the square root of 121? Do you remember? It's 11, exactly. So I actually have 7 plus or minus 11 divided by 2. So I have u is equal to 7 minus 11 divided by 2, which is going to be 7. Well, 7 minus 11 is what? Negative 4, correct? So we end up with negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. Now on the other end over here, we end up with u is equal to 7 plus 11 divided by 2. So 7 plus 11 is going to give me 18, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I have u is equal to negative 2 and u is equal to 9. So next I need to take and solve for x, because all I have done is solve for u. So let me switch ink colors here. We'll go to pink, and we need to remember that u is equal to x squared, and the question is I'm supposed to solve for x. So if u equals x squared, oops, come back over here. So remember we said let u equal x squared. So I have u is equal to -2 and I have u is equal to 9. So if u is equal to -2 and that equals x squared, in order to solve for what x is equal to, I'm going to have to take the square root of both sides, and I'm going to therefore have, if I take the square root of both sides, right, I end up with the square root of -2 is equal to x, okay, and it would actually be plus or minus, okay, and when I have a negative underneath there, that's going just to be I. So that's actually going to be x is going to be equal to plus or minus I on the square root of 2. And so that's the first part. Let's look at the second part. So the second part over here is u is equal to 9. So if I have u is equal to 9, that means that 9 is equal to x squared. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides, and I end up with plus or minus 3 is equal to x. So that is my second answer right there. You'll notice I have 4 answers, and that's perfectly okay, because if you look at the original equation, it was raised to the 4th power, so we would expect to have possibly 4 answers. So we have plus and minus I on the square root of 2, that's 2 answers. Plus or minus x equals 3, x equals plus or minus 3, that's 2 answers. So we have 4 total. Now let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit, and we'll get ready to solve the next problem, which is number 27. So number 27 looks like this. 27 says I have 3 times, so 3 times x plus 2 squared plus, well, come on, 5 times x plus 2 plus 2 equals 0. Okay, so that is my first, that's my equation. So you'll notice again, this term right here is to the 1st power, and this one right here is to the 2nd power. 2 is twice 1, so we can say this is indeed a quadratic equation. So we're going to again say we're going to do a substitution. U equal, what are we going to substitute? X plus 2 as our expression. So that means we're going to have 3u squared plus 5u plus 2 equals 0. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and use the slide, divide, multiply, or the slide, multiply, and divide option here. So I have 2 times 3, which is 6. So I'm going to have u squared plus 5u plus 6 equals 0. Set out our parentheses, put my u here and my u here. I have a positive and a positive, so it's going to be positive and positive. And my factors of 6 are going to be 1. Whoa, that was not so good. Let's see about hitting an undo on that. There we go. So our factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3, okay? And we need like signs, and they need to add up to 5. So that means we're going to have 2 and 3 as our factors. So 2 and 3. So we did our slide, we did our multiply, and now it's time to do our divide. So now we're going to divide through by 3. So over here we have a 2/3, and so we can leave it like this, but I prefer to go ahead and put it in our factored form, because sometimes you need to know what your factors are. in more of a standard form. And then our 3 divided by 3 reduces to 1. So it's u plus 1 equals 0. So let's solve for u. So we will say 3u plus 2 is equal to 0. And then we have u plus 1 equals to 0. So we subtract 2 from both sides, and we get 3u is equal to negative 2. Divide both sides through by 3, and we get therefore u is equal to negative 2/3. Over here we will end up with u is equal to negative 1. Now again, that is what u equals. We must continue on with our work to find out what x equals. We defined x as, or u as x plus 2. Okay, right here is where we did our substitution. We said let u equal x plus 2. So if u equals negative 2/3, that means I'm going to have negative 2/3 is equal to x plus 2. Now we have to solve for x. And we can subtract 2 off of each side, and we end up with x is equal to negative 2 2/3. So x is equal to negative 2 2/3, which is the same thing as negative 8 divided by 3. Over here, we can then say we have negative 1. So we can say negative 1 is going to equal to x plus 2. Subtract 2 from both sides, and we end up with negative 3 is equal to x. So our final answers right here are that x, because that's what we're solving for as a variable, not u, is equal to negative 8/3 and negative 3. If you have, oops, my 3 disappeared. So if you have any questions, send me an email.